Hello, beautiful. We're going to talk about something that's really close to my heart, and that is binging. I was a binge eater from the age of about 13, probably earlier, through till I started to recover when I was 19, and I fully felt like I'd recovered when I was about 21. And I did not, I don't think, have binge eating disorder, but I didn't seek medical help for it. Now I'm an eating psychology coach. I'm Laura Lloyd, and I do help people who experience binges as part of their overeating pattern in my everyday client work. How do you know if you've got binge eating disorder as an official diagnosis? Well, the things to look for would be having significant binging episodes 2 or more times a week, and a significant episode from a diagnostic point of view would be eating an industrial amount of food, like 2,000 to 300,000 calories in one go. And then those binge eating episodes would be followed by a excruciating shame. Now, if you do experience binging to that degree, it might be worth you going to seek some medical help, because there are programs which are established to help with this particular behavior. But equally, there are many of us who are like I was, who are just driven mad by their own behavior, obsessing about it, thinking about it all of the time, feeling constantly guilty about it, but it may not actually be, quote unquote, bad enough to fit into that category. And there is hope for you if that's you, and that is not simply an absence of willpower. You've got stuck in a habitual pattern of eating, and we can help you to unlearn it. But the solution to binge eating is never what you think. When you're going through it, I know when I was going through it, I wanted nothing more than for it to stop. Can I just get off this treadmill of doing it again and wanting it to stop, and promising myself that I would stop it and then doing it again? And it was almost like the harder I tried to stop it, the more it kept happening, and the more inevitable, and the more I felt like I was autopiloted, compelled to do that behavior without me being involved at all. It felt as though I was a puppet on a string. And the puppet master was the particular binge food which I had probably told myself was off limits. If you've seen my podcast episode, listen to my podcast episode on High Food I'm Home podcast on restriction, some of this might be ringing some bells for you. Because if you've ever Googled the binge restrict cycle, and if you haven't, then definitely do, because these two things go hand in hand. The more we try to not do something, the more we end up doing it. And it's because we rebel against our own behavior. It's because when we tell ourselves we're going to stop doing something, we're also taking away something which is very rewarding for us, which might even be, in our minds, painful as it is in the aftermath, our greatest pleasure or release, or giving us some kind of numbing out and oblivion and letting go of pressure, which is really serving an emotional function in our lives. Until we really understand that part, just taking away the behavior, like trying to be on a diet and stop eating the bad things, is all just heaping up a load of pressure that makes us want to backlash. So that's why I decided to make a podcast episode which was exactly about trying to stop binge eating. And that's coming up soon on High Food I'm Home podcast. So if you're not already subscribed on Apple, you can follow it on Apple, or on iTunes, you can follow it on iTunes. Then do so, because you'll be notified then when the episode drops. There are alternative ways to configure the process of unlearning overeating and binge eating. And it doesn't always have to look like a new regime, a clean start, a new promise. There could be something subtler, something gentler, and something more self-compassionate that we could do, which could allow us to unravel the reasons behind it and work with it over time. I want to give you hope, and you might find this depressing to hear, but it took me a couple of years working with cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy. I had a self-help program. It was genius for me at the time, but what also really helped about it was that I completely committed to it, and I just used a journal and I figured it out bit by bit myself, very slowly. Now, unraveling your binge eating might not take you that long, but I want to ask you, if it did take you a while, are you willing to be patient enough to do it the slow way and change your habits bit by bit? And it might not be like binge eating is like being in a very dramatic, bad place with food, and then overeating and stopping binge eating is like a door that you've walked through where all is well and everything's rosy on the other side of it. It might be much more that you gradually evolve your behavior to a point where there are days when you might overeat and you might think, well, I don't even know if I categorize that as a binge anymore. Can you allow yourself to evolve out of it instead of falling for this kind of boot camp notion, this like transformational notion that I think reality TV and the Cinderella story has sold to us? All right, tune in for the podcast episode. I'll take you into much more detail on actually what unraveling this bit by bit might look like.